Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name's Narelle Maluish and I'm from Holiday World, and today I want to talk to you about something that every traveller needs to be aware of, especially if you're flying, and that is airline overbooking. So have you ever been told that your flight is full, or worse, you've been bumped off the flight altogether? If you've ever wondered why this happens, it's because airlines often sell more tickets than they have seats. But don't worry, by the end of this video, I will explain to you why airlines do this, and I'll give you some tips on how you can avoid this so that you're not left behind at the airport. And just wait until you hear a couple of stories that I have for you. Trust me, you'll want to stay tuned for those. So let's start with why airlines overbook. This is something that has been around since World War II. Airlines noticed that a lot of people simply didn't show up for their flights. And to avoid the flights going out with empty seats, the airlines started to sell more tickets than the seats that were available. Today's airlines all around the world still do this, and yes, it is legal. But what happens when all the passengers turn up? That's when passengers can be bumped. Sometimes it's voluntary, where the airline asks you if you'd like to give up your seat in exchange for compensation. And sometimes it's involuntary, where you could be rebooked on a later flight with little or no choice in the matter. Interestingly, airlines often don't like to admit that their flight is overbooked. They'll just say that the flight is full, or they'll just try to manage it without explaining to you why you don't have a seat. So this actually happened to a couple of my clients recently, and this is a little bit about their story. So I had a couple that were flying from the UK to Portugal. They weren't tech savvy and they weren't regular travellers. So they just waited until they got to the airport to do their check-in. Big mistake. When they got to the check-in counter, the airline told the husband, "You don't have a seat." But instead of explaining that the flight was overbooked, the agent made it sound like it was a booking error and that there was something wrong with his ticket. To make things worse, they split the couple up, checking the wife in and rebooking him on a flight 8 hours later. So you can imagine how stressed they were. They called me and we tried to work our way through it. They eventually got where they were going, but they definitely weren't happy. At no point did the airline admit that the flight was overbooked, letting the couple continue to believe that it was a mistake. Can you just imagine how confused and stressful it was for them? So that's why it's so important to check in early and to be prepared. More on that in just a minute. How can you avoid getting into a situation like that? Here are some practical tips to make sure you're not the one that's left behind. Tip number 1 is check in early. This is a big one. Airlines often bump passengers who check in last, so don't wait until you're at the airport. Check in online as soon as it opens, which is usually 24 to 48 hours before your flight departs. It could make a big difference. If you can't check in then, if there's an issue with the check-in, then be at the airport nice and early to check in as soon as the check-in counter opens. Number 2, choose your seat in advance. If your airline lets you choose your seat when you book, take it. Passengers without pre-assigned seats are far more likely to be bumped, so lock in those seats ahead of time. If for some reason there is a charge for you to do that, then that'll be up to you whether you choose to do that or whether you'll just risk it and check in when the online check-in opens. So tip number 3, join the airline's loyalty program. Even if you don't fly often, joining the frequent flyer program can help. Airlines are less likely to bump their loyal members, even if you're just at a basic level. Number 4, be prepared during busy times. Flights during the holidays or peak seasons are often overbooked. So if you can, try to fly midweek during these times or choose off-peak times altogether to reduce your risk of being bumped. And that just leads me to another story. Doug and I were in Europe recently, and when we were checking in for our flight to come home from Rome, there were passengers next to us that I could hear were being asked to volunteer to go on a later flight because obviously the flight was overbooked. I think they said it was fully booked. Now, it was interesting. Again, the airline didn't say it was overbooked, didn't explain any of that. They just asked the passengers if they would volunteer to give up their seats. As I said before, they rarely admit that they're oversold. This is something that we're seeing more and more of. Luckily, the couple seemed to be flexible and they might have been happy with the compensation. But imagine if they weren't. That's why these tips are important that I'm sharing with you today. So, what do you think? Have you ever had a similar situation where you've been bumped from a flight or asked to volunteer? Tell me in the comments below. And if you have any questions about airline overbooking or want more tips on how you can make your travel smoother, drop them in the chat or give me a call in the office. Be happy to answer any of your questions and chat to you about your upcoming holiday. That's it for today with my video. I hope these tips have been helpful for you to avoid being bumped off your next flight. Remember, airline booking is just part of modern travel today. But with a few smart moves, we can make sure that you stay in control of your travel plans. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, tap the notifications, and then you'll never miss any of my future tips. So safe travels, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye for now.